Guys, seriously, like, Catwoman exists. Like, movies like that exist. There's been some pretty bad comic book movies out there, so I don't get all the Twitter uproar saying this is either the best comic book movie ever made or the worst. It's a comic book movie. It exists. I mean, what controversy has this movie not gone under yet? There's been a lot of reshoots, a lot of things going on behind the scenes. Of course, Ezra Miller has been a problem in doing bad things outside the set. But here we're talking about the movie itself, the quality of the film, how I feel about it, and just separating all that, we're talking about the movie as it stands. How is it as a quality comic book film? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about The Flash. So The Flash, for me, honestly, I was really worried. I was kind of worried because there were some elements in here that would have been, I think, distracting for a Flash movie to be. I was worried the movie was going to take on too much at once, doing a Flashpoint story right out the gate for Barry Allen's origin story. Well, not really origin story, but, his solo outing as a hero. And really, dealing with that whole story, it felt like it would be a daunting task to do, and it would be. This is a story that's very dense in the comics. A lot of elements and layers and characters need to be attached to ahead of time before doing a Flashpoint story. However, I gotta say, for what this movie was doing and being an adaptation rather than a direct translation, I thought it was pretty solid. I had a lot of fun with The Flash, and I think Andy Muschietti had a lot to do with that. His direction is great. I think he does a really good job, and he has a great eye for the camera in this. I think the cinematography in this film is beautiful. I know he's not the cinematographer, but his direction, along with the cinematographer doing their thing, did a lot for this film. The eye of this movie is gorgeous, and I'll get into that in just a second. But first, we'll start off with the story and the characters. I think the characters in this film are really nice. I was really worried because we had Michael Keaton coming back as Batman. Michael Keaton has never been my favorite Batman of, the Batman performances, but I've always liked him because he was my first Batman. He was the first Batman I literally ever watched on screen. So I was so excited to see him come back in this, and I gotta say that I think this might be my favorite time seeing him playing Batman, because he carries what he had in the Tim Burton films, that zaniness, that craziness, that weirdness that he, cared about as himself. He was a dude that literally slept upside down like a bat. The dude was not well up in the head. And I like how Michael Keaton portrayed that in the original two films. And I like that we get more of that here, but times 10 a bit, because he's older, he's lost it a little bit more. However, on top of that, they were able to provide more wisdom with him. And I thought he played more of a mentor role that I see Batman like. So I got more of a Batman that I enjoyed from Michael Keaton, while also getting the elements of Michael Keaton that I love from his original two performances with Batman and Batman Returns. So I thought overall that was just a win-win. It's a great opposite of Barry in this movie, and let's get into the actual main character, Barry Allen. I do appreciate that this film does have an emotional hook. Sometimes the movie does lose focus of it, but never to a point that it took me out. I really dug the emotional center of this film and the heart it had to it. I'm seeing a lot of criticism online saying that it's redundant and, cliche. However, I'm just sitting here like, I think Barry Allen's story with his mom is the point of Flashpoint. That's always been the point. It's just being comic accurate in the themes that whole story tackles. So that being in the movie and the message that it comes with, spoiler free of course, wasn't cliche to me. It was just being accurate. That's kind of a win. I like that this movie was able to tackle the themes of Barry having to deal with the loss of his mother. What happens if you were to go back in time and alter that, and what that means for himself. They do something really cool with Barry in this film as a character by making him interact with his younger self in the movie, so you get the idea of what Barry's origin was like when he got his powers without actually making an origin movie, and I thought it was really clever to do. And it leads to a lot of good comedic moments, but not only that, good emotional center moments with Barry and himself when they're talking. There's one great moment where Barry's just going off on his younger self, and it did a lot for the movie, and I feel like it added a sense of relatability to it, because we've all just had that idea of what if we could talk to ourselves from 10 years ago? What would we say to that? I like that this movie explored that, and I thought it did it with flying colors, honestly. Sometimes the movie does feel like there was a longer cut out there that got cut down, but never to a point that detrimented from the film, and I never felt like the film's voice and soul was lost in the reshoots or whatever happened behind set in this movie, because you can see that keen eye and one vision from Muschietti throughout the entire film, and that really shows through how the plot structure goes. I think the writing in this is pretty solid for the most part. Yes, there are moments where I think studio cameos and interference and cool Easter eggs can get a little bit heavy-handed, and I don't just mean a little bit, I do mean a lot. It's very on the nose with certain cameos, but also there's some cool deep cut jokes in there too, which I like. However, they're not needed in this movie. You feel like you could take the cameos and some of the other cameos in this film out. The movie would be no different. I didn't mind them being there, but there's a weird precedent I also don't like that this movie sets with all the cameos that show up. I'm not going to give it away, but it's a convoluted thing. The point is, while distracting sometimes, and never distracted from the point of Barry and what his arc is. And it never fully took away from that, so I never lost sight of that. So I was always emotionally engaged. The dynamics between the characters really carried this movie. I loved all the characters. I thought Barry in dealing with himself was really fun and comedic at times, and the comedy really worked for me. There are moments that play with the idea of Barry's powers and what that means when he has to relearn them. And I thought that humor, that tongue-in-cheek type of humor, really worked for me, and it made me laugh a lot. I thought Muschietti's balance of drama and comedy in this film worked a lot, and I thought the moments, especially with Michael Keaton's comedic delivery, was really well done. So the comedy didn't distract me, and it was nice seeing a comic book movie that was making me laugh, and just have a good time while also being able to emotionally get me where I need to be. I do think this movie's not getting enough credit where it's due on the character dynamics, and I really enjoyed them in this film. One last character I forgot to shout out in this one, because there's a bunch of them, is Ben Affleck's Batman. I was so hyped to see him back. Ben Affleck is my second favorite Batman in terms of just performance. Writing sometimes needs a little work, but I do love how he portrays the character, and seeing him play the fully closured Batman, playing the mentor role for Barry before he goes off into his multiverse adventure was really nice and so satisfying for me as an Affleck fan. He has one of the best lines in the film, or best moments in the film, where he's talking to Barry about loss and what it all means, and I think seeing Ben Affleck's Batman deliver that was the perfect closure you could have given for his character. I've used more of him just in the movie because I like him, yes. However, for what they did with him, it really worked for me, and it really satisfied me. Except for one joke at the end. There's one joke, and it's literally the last frame of the movie. I'm talking the last literal second of the film. They do a joke with the multiverse stuff that I did not like, and I thought it jumped the shark way too much. But it was one shot at the end of the movie compared to 2.5 hours of entertainment I had before, so it didn't ruin the film, but it was just one of those things that made me go, oh, I see what you're doing, movie, but I'm not picking it up. It's not funny to me. It's dumb. Really, that's really the biggest thing, is that and then, what I said about the cameos. Those are really my biggest issues with this film, is the studio note stuff that's very obviously studio note. Back to positives, like I said, the cinematography, this movie is visually stunning, and there are moments where it feels like a comic book come to life. I think Andy Muschietti combines a sense of Snyder with Burton, and they kind of went splat together to make this movie, and I like that blend of two styles a lot. I think it works for a lot of the imagery in this film, especially when we're using rain, when we're doing imagery in terms of Barry trying to get his powers back. I think there's some great shots, one with Supergirl especially. Speaking of Supergirl, she's also great in this film. I've always wanted to see Kara come to life on screen, and we finally got to see that. This is an alternate version of her, yes, but I would love to see more with her. Please don't recast Sasha Kelly. I think she's fantastic in this role, and I want to see more of her going forward, because I think she could do a lot more. The writing doesn't really always give her too much, but I think as an introductory piece, it's perfect. I could really use more, though. I did love her presence in this movie. They do a good job at illustrating what makes her different from Clark. So yeah, Supergirl killed it. I want to see more of her. I thought she was awesome. I thought the third act was also really clever, and I'm not going to give it away, but I think the way they deal with the final conflict of this movie was super well done. I like that the movie was able to have all this comic book explosive action going on that did make me smile, and there were moments that were great. Yeah, wacky CGI here and there, sure, a lot of that is in this movie, but the way the internet's making it out to be like the worst CGI ever, and like the worst thing you've ever seen in a comic book movie, I really don't agree with that. I actually think the CGI and the effects were pretty well utilized at certain points, especially when adding to the wonkiness of how Barry uses his powers in the Speed Force. It's not bad like Love and Thunder. It doesn't look awful like certain MCU projects that have come out. I actually think it was a step up from a lot of the Marvel movie effects as of lately, except for Guardians 3. That's just my take on it. I think the hate on the effects is getting a little overblown. It's like anytime you ask someone what they think of The Flash now online, it's like, oh, the CGI was bad. I'm like, okay, cool. What did you think of anything else, literally? Barry still has a full arc in this movie, and again, I think the third act does a good job at cleverly throwing that comic book fan service out there, but also recentering it back up to be character-focused on Barry, the main pivotal point of the movie. And I thought it was really clever in how it did that without spoiling. Some of the pacing is a little off. There are certain moments where I think characters... there's one particular moment, and it's just a nitpick. It was a scene where Iris is talking to Barry. They're having a conversation at the bottom of an apartment complex, and then Barry, literally, while talking to Iris, is talking to her about going upstairs, runs upstairs, beats her there as she left before him, and is in the room letting her in before Iris gets there. And Iris doesn't even question it. She's just like, oh, hey, Barry. And I'm like, did you not... He just... Come on. Certain moments like that, and certain moments with, younger Barry just acting more stupid than he needs to the point where I don't buy it, are really silly. Especially a moment where younger Barry is talking to Michael Keaton, and he goes, wait, you're Batman? And I'm like, dude, you knew that. We've been here talking for a while now. There's there are certain jokes that I get you're trying to be funny, but did you even think about what the implications of what that does for the characters? I don't know, just some jokes do that for me where it just takes me out of it. It's just small nitpick. Overall, I think this was solid. I think there's a lot of fun to be had with The Flash. I don't think it's as bad as people are saying, but I don't think it's as amazing as people are saying as well. It's in the middle. It's just a fun time, but at the end of the day, it felt like one unique vision. It felt like Andy Muschietti's voice was on screen the entire time, and I had a lot of fun with the fan service that was given to me, and it never felt overly forced, except for that ending and third act where certain cameos did feel very forced. This movie worked for me. I like The Flash. There's so much dumb controversy behind this movie. I just kind of want to get this review out of the way. Yeah, go watch The Flash, or don't. I really don't care anymore. But thank you.